Welcome, everyone, to a Monday night edition of Cardboard Culture. This is episode number 45. We want to thank our previous guest, Thomas McKeels, for joining us last week and sharing his love for the freak Tim Lincecum. We got to hear and see what he has amassed in terms of rare super short print and one-of-one cards of Tim Lincecum. We do hope that Thomas gets to add those ones that he is missing and those to add to his PC. And we will carry on with our show tonight. We're just waiting for our special guest to arrive. So just hang tight for a second. And we hope to have him on. So who do we got here? Hello, Dennis. How are you? While we're waiting for our special guest tonight, Dennis, did you catch any of the football? I don't know if you watch football. How about those games yesterday? 3 of them decided in the last second by field goals. And did anybody catch that KC Buffalo game? That was just pretty wild. Just saying. Although I don't know about you guys, I don't really like the format of the overtime in the NFL. I don't know what you guys think about that. I think that every team should have a chance to drive down the field, at least try to get some points, versus just the first team who wins the coin toss and they drive down. If they get a touchdown, then the game's over. So that was kind of strange. Oh, here we go. Ameet, over to you.
Okay, I'm back. Kent, where did you leave off? Because I had to place a call.
I said over to you.
Okay, well, there you go. So tonight we have a bucket list moment. It's an honor to have this gentleman on the show tonight. I've listened to his voice since I was a wee little kid. I remember reading the Peter Puck books, and I'm truly happy to bring him on. And we're going to talk about his life, his story, and of course his latest book. And we'll get into it. So let's bring on the legendary Brian McFarlane.
Glad to be with you guys. I was a little distracted and lost track of time, but here we are, and I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad we hooked up.
Yes, for sure, and not a problem. We all get distracted. Even I get distracted while I'm on live shows sometimes. Anyways, wanted to really, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time. I know your life is busy and you've got lots of things to do. So I want to give you thanks for at least coming on our show, and I hope you enjoy it. So we're going to get into some questions, and
Yes.
We'll take it from there. Sounds good?
Okay, let's go. Yes.
Alrighty. So before we get into your current events and your books and whatnot, I want to kind of get a flavor for who you were as a child. So can you explain to us as an audience, like, what were you like as a child? What was Brian like? Like, what was he before he became the famous broadcaster?
Oh, dear, was a child. That's going back almost 90 years. Anyway, I grew up I was born in Northern Ontario in Haileybury. My dad was an author and a writer. He penned the first 21 Hardy Boys books. You may be surprised to learn.
Wow.
Because they sold in the millions, but he only got $100 a book flat fee. And so we never owned a house or a car. We always rented. Then when I was about 4 years old, we moved to Whitby, Ontario, where I first discovered hockey, backyard pond hockey, that sort of thing. And I just was fascinated. I'd be out there at all hours, kind of the lure of the ice. And even if I had to play alone or with my sisters, I would do that. And I just love finding a whole group of other guys, older guys, playing a couple of blocks away and on a much larger ice surface on the park. So I would gravitate there at every opportunity, thinking someday I'll be another Sillaps or whatever. And I don't want to make this a long story, so it was rather an ordinary childhood. Other than that, the hockey, the fascination of hockey, and it grabbed me early, and it's never let go. Although my dad took me aside one day and said, if you don't give up this hockey, you'll never amount to anything. And it got me quite a lot, actually. It got me a college education, first of all. Yeah. I never thought that would happen, but I did get a hockey scholarship to St. Lawrence University when I was playing junior A, and that turned my whole life around. And I sent my daughters there. My sister came down and joined me. I brought some friends down to form a better team. And we went to the Final Four 2 years out of 4 back in the 50s. That meant
Wow.
a trip to Colorado on an airplane. I'd never been on an airplane.
That's awesome. So one thing I have to say, Brian, you still have the voice. So I haven't heard your voice on TV in a while. And when you started talking, actually this afternoon when we were chatting and trying to get the link to work,
Yes.
you brought me right back to being a kid. I remember listening to you on the TV and, you know, just with my dad, sitting right beside my dad, listening to you. It was just a wash with emotion. So it was really, really cool to hear your voice. So I'm really happy that we had this chance.
Well, that's
So,
nice of you to say that because I've been worried about my voice. I had to narrate a full book I just wrote, the one you're talking about, A Helluva Life in Hockey, for an audio version. And I
Oh,
said,
wow.
I'm not sure I can do that. My voice is getting kind of raspy, and it means hours of work. They didn't do it in a studio. They came right here where I'm sitting and did it on a computer. And that was great. So I'm glad it all got done and done reasonably well. So the voice is there, but it's not like it used to be. I know that.
oh no, it's good. It's definitely good to hear. So you brought up you gave a kind of a sneak peek to your life as a child. You brought up the Hardy Boys. So I have to say, when I was reading your book, there was a point where I literally paused. I had my wife reread it and go, "Does this read like it was his dad that wrote Hardy Boys?" And she's like, "Yes, his dad wrote." So for everyone in the audience, Leslie McFarlane, am I saying it right?
Yes.
Leslie McFarlane was Brian's dad, and he penned the first 21 volumes of the Hardy Boys books, which I could not get enough of. And I even bought a set for my son. And I could not believe, not only am I talking to Brian, your dad actually wrote those books. I was like floored. I was actually floored. So talk to us a little bit about what it was like to know that your dad wrote those books.
Well, I didn't know about it till I was about 10 years old, and I saw them on his bookshelf in his little office where he wrote. There was no door on it, and I sat on a box or a chair, I'm not sure which. I said, "Where'd you get those books, the Hardy Boys? Did you read them when you were a kid?" And he said, "No, I wrote them." And he said, "I'm not supposed to tell anybody. In fact, I was sworn to secrecy by the publisher, but he told me." And of course, he said, "Don't tell all your friends I'm writing that nonsense." Of course, I went and told them all right away. But just today, and one reason I was distracted, I'm going through my computer to old issues of Maclean's magazine.
Yeah.
And my dad has about 25 stories scattered through those old issues, and I'm collecting them for my great grandkids and grandkids, and maybe for McMaster University, where I donate a lot of the McFarlane memorabilia, if you call it. And I'm having a great fun finding some old hockey stories and adventure stories by Leslie McFarlane in there. And then the other authors I've stumbled on. And I feel there's a treasure trove of Canadiana in there. I'd like to do a book called The Wild, Wild West of Canada, because there's some gripping stories of grizzly bears and wolverines and wolves howling outside the teepees and that sort of thing. So I'm all excited to hear. I am 90 years old thinking about other projects when I should be thinking about, I don't know, girls or booze or whatever.
What's
Anyway.
funny though is no one else knows this. I learned this today too. You've hit a milestone. You have 100+ books under your belt, right?
Well, I think so. I've got 100 in my, counting the ones 10 or 15 I've got in my computer, which I'm trying to get to publishers. It's about in the 90 somewhere and pretty close to 100. I don't control the counting of it. I leave family members to do that, and I know it's getting close.
That's awesome. Going back to the Hardy Boys just for a second, I just want to focus on that because I'm utterly tickled pink about that. Do you think your dad ever modeled any of the characters off of anyone in the family? Like, do you think you could relate to any of the characters in the series?
No, I don't think so. He was given an outline by the publisher in New Jersey. The Tower Treasure, for example, they'd send him 2 pages, and there'd be a tower in it, and the kids would have to apprehend a scoundrel or chase some thieves through the woods. I don't know. I don't think he ever patterned any family members, but I do think he based it pretty much on Haileybury, Ontario, as Bayport, I guess the name of the town in the book was. And some people said it's a town based on the eastern seaboard of the U.S., and maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't think he cared very much. He was just happy to get the book down and get his $100 so he could buy some wood for the furnace for the winter.
For sure. And you did talk about sort of one quick thing I wanted to say. I related to Chet Morton, who is the hobbyist in the book, and this is a hobby channel, so it relates.
Yes.
You did talk about in your book about, when you grew up, it wasn't actually easy living for you. Your dad and your mom worked really hard for the family. So that kind of, ironed out who you are as a person. You want to talk about that really quick?
Well, I envied my dad's ability to sit at a typewriter all day. No other father I knew did that, and live at home, and all the clatter of kids running around and making noise. And no, as I said, not even a door on his office. And here I live pretty much the same kind of existence myself. I'm sitting in my office now, and I think of all the office I've sat in over the years. But I got out there and I did other things. I played 20 years with the NHL Old Timers, and I started a hockey museum in Niagara Falls. I owned a lacrosse team once and hired John Ferguson as my coach and general manager. Nice. And named them the Montreal Canadiens, and took all their colors and the CH and put it on my lacrosse jerseys with their permission. And that was a one-year adventure that I wouldn't have had another chance if I hadn't gone to a meeting and somebody had said, "Who wants the Montreal Pro franchise?" And I found my hand going up. I almost grabbed it and pulled it down, but I didn't. Yeah. And I suddenly owned a lacrosse franchise, and I had to put up any money. Not then. It cost me about $5,000 about a week later. Yeah. But I tended to take chances with my life, and we took our kids from coast to coast camping out. I just said, while you're at the proper age, I want you to see Canada. And we went all the way to Tofino, BC, camping out each night in one summer. And the next summer, I took them all the way to Newfoundland and back. And I think a year or two later, they would have had boyfriends or got involved with others and not wanted to go, but they were the perfect age for it. Yeah. And they still remember it. And that was one triumph, I think, in my existence.
Awesome. I'm going to quickly say hi to some people who showed up to the channel. So quickly, I want to say hi to, hey, Dennis, thanks for coming.
Hello, Dennis.
And we have Barry Ma. Thank you for coming.
Oh, Barry.
And Dennis said as soon as he heard the voice, he knew it was the legend. So there you go. You got some compliments there.
Hi, Dennis. Good to have you aboard.
We have Jeremy. He's one of my closest friends. He used to read the Hardy Boys book. So there, Jeremy, we have a tie-in for you. And we have another comment here. Fantastic conversation. All Hardy Boys and Peter Puck crossover would be cool. Celebrating 2 generations of authors. Awesome. And then we have ink paper wax collector, gives us a smiley face. So I admittedly, and I'm kind of happy this happened. We veered off the questions we did, but it's okay. I don't mind this kind of atmosphere. So I'm going to just look at where we are at the questions. Just make sure I turn it over to Kent. I'm going to turn it over to you, buddy.
Thanks. Before I get into my questions, I also want to show this one because I think you missed it, Ameet. Brian Bobby says you have one of the best voices in hockey always.
Oh, thank you. I never realized that. There are always so many that had better, deeper voices and all the rest of it.
Well, there's like you, Danny Gallivan. There were a lot of good ones, and we missed them. So I'm glad that we can actually record this. So,
well, one of my favorites was Danny Gallivan. I liked working with him because he was a hockey guy. It was in his passion, and I guess you don't know that he might have been a major league ball player. He was the best ball player in the Maritimes when he was a young lad. and he pitched and had a chance to try out with the Yankees, but he threw his arm out in training camp and had to give up the game, and that's what turned him, I guess, to broadcasting. But he was a delight to work with. I really enjoyed Danny. The Hewitts were a little different. They were very reclusive, Bill and Foster. And I worked with Bill for 17 years, and I think I only had maybe 2 meals with him in that time. He never seemed to travel on the same plane or stay at the same hotel or congregate with us after a game for a beer. But that was his style, and Foster's. They were very close as father and son.
Book.
Yeah. But Danny was, I don't know, easier to get to know. And he told wonderful stories about past hockey experiences. So I really enjoyed Danny's company. And Don Cherry, he was very good to me when he first joined the hockey telecasts. And in fact, he gave me hell one day. He said, I know you have this log house out in the country and it's just off the 401, and I go visit my mother every weekend. But he said, I've been up to your place 3 times now. I've been pounding at the door and trying to get in, and then you're never home. And I said, Don, my wife just had time to pull the blinds and turn the lights off and hide the car behind the shed. She saw you coming. And he didn't know whether I was kidding him or not, but of course I was. I don't want to take up all the conversation here, so I'm going to give you guys a chance to get a word.
No worries. We love hearing your stories. Trust us. So you mentioned that you used to collect beehive corn syrup photos, but did you also collect hockey cards as a youngster?
I did collect the photos and some of the cards, but I wasn't an avid collector till I got into the museum business.
Oh.
And when you have a museum, as I did for 10 years, first on the 401 at the Big Apple, if you know where that is, past Gilbert, Port Hope, and then in Niagara Falls for 9 years. And I had a good collection of photos, and I thought, well, I'll open a small museum and just go there. And it kind of snowballed into a travel museum. We were at the CNE for some summers, and we'd take it to the fall fairs around the province and set it up for a week or a weekend. But the main museum was in Niagara Falls for many years. And I found that the collections grew whether I wanted it to or not. I let a guy in free once to be with his kids. I, sir, get in from the parking lot. Come on, and you don't have to pay. I want you to take this tour with your children. So he did, and the next week he brought me Terry Sawchuk's goal stick from the 1960 Stanley Cup playoffs, signed by all the Red Wings, signatures everywhere. And that was nice of you to let me in free last week. I want you to have this memorabilia. And then he came around with a couple of new tennis rackets because he was in the tennis business. And my wife and I don't even play tennis, but he insisted we take those rackets and learn the game, which we never did. But that was so nice of him to do that. And people would bring in old hockey helmets and sticks. I have a 1902 goal stick in my closet at the moment, right 50 feet from here, used in the 1902 Stanley Cup playoffs by a goaltender, a 300-pound goaltender. And it's grown in value over the years, and someday I'll give it to the Hockey Hall of Fame, I guess. But it was so interesting that people would just come in and offer gifts and pictures, and it got to be a pretty good collection. And then the municipality of I've forgotten the name. Anyway, I set it up in a municipality, and the mayor took a dim view of it, but the mayor who was in the office at the time liked it, and he wanted to establish it there and have it just be there forever. Well, he got into a scrap with his wife one day and was charged, and this ruined his chances of being reelected. And as soon as the new mayor came in, he closed it all down. and they sold it all off to a group in Edmonton who promised to reopen it out there, but they haven't done it yet. I think they're waiting for me to get hit by a turnip truck so they can then sell it off somewhere. But that's life. That's business.
So Brian, speaking of hockey cards, back in 06, 07, Upper Deck asked you to sign a bunch of hockey cards for their set. So what was it like to have a company approach you to have you autograph hockey cards?
Oh, I never dreamed that would happen. I think Dick Irvin and I are the only two that had hockey cards made of announcers. I mean, who would even think of that? But it was flattering. We didn't get many requests, I'm sure, but it's been 10 years now, I guess, since that happened. And I think I still have a couple of those cards around. My signature now, I'm so shaky in my dotage that I'm signing with my right hand now, and I've always been left-handed.
Oh, no way.
I wonder if they notice at the bank that my signature has improved immeasurably since 2 years ago when I was all over the paper. You know? I'm much neater now, and they must wonder why that happened.
That signature was really nice. I'm in a few minutes. I'll bring it up so everyone can see. But I wanted to actually just show everyone a quick picture of you in your Hockey Night in Canada days, and you'll see a couple of other legends in here as well. So I'll just bring us up. I don't know if you can see this.
Bill.
Look at those funny.
Yeah.
Who are these people? I know this. I grew up with him too, Dave Hodge.
Hodge, yeah.
Yeah, I liked working with Dave. He I don't know whether he got a raw deal or not by flipping the pencil one night to show his disdain for a decision they made not to go to a game. It seems like such a simple thing that almost anybody might do, but he had to pay heavily for that and was dismissed. And I always thought, well, heck, I did a lot of things that annoyed Ballard and got dismissed a couple of times, but we missed Dave when he left, but it left an opening for Ron McLean, who came in as was he a raw rookie when he joined us from Red Deer, Alberta. And he had to go on with grapes right off the bat and sit there all wide-eyed and weepy-eyed at times because apparently he had a tear in his eye that popped out when he was first with grapes, and he was turning his face away from the camera so nobody would think he was crying on camera. But that's a story that he'd be better to tell than me.
Right.
Here's the card in question, and that's a very good signature, and that's your signature look with the blue CBC jacket.
Yeah, blue blazer, CBC blazer.
Yeah, I signed those down in Florida. We used to go to Florida every year. We don't do it now because of the recent events in the world, but I joined a group of guys down there, a bunch of old timers playing up in Fort Myers, and Don Orey was one of them, Team Canada, Boston Bruins, and we had a guy from Minnesota. 2 or 3 former NHLers played with us, and a bunch of Americans, Canadians, half and half, and some Europeans thrown in, and even some of the daughters of the guys. A girl in her 30s came out with us once, and one of the big defensemen who played in Minnesota bowled her over on the ice, and I thought she was badly hurt, but she jumped right up, and I thought that was gritty. Boy, did she ever show him up. So brings back good memories.
For sure. Go ahead, Kent.
So not only did we, this book, by the way, there we go.
Yeah.
Helluva Hockey Life there by Ryan McFarlane.
That's
not only did we learn about the Hardy Boys, but you also talk about a very familiar character, Peter Puck.
Yes.
So I want to ask you, your book details this quite well, and I want to ask you, what made you decide to buy the rights to Peter Puck?
Well, that was when I was with NBC. By the way, they were the best people I ever worked with, the NBC crew. I thought they'd be coldly New Yorkish or whatever, but They were very warm and welcoming, and we even got a hockey team together with the NBC jerseys. Ted Lindsay was my centerman. I'd play right wing, Tim Ryan on left wing. We didn't have many players, but they were waiting to play us. Every week we'd go to Philadelphia, Chicago, Detroit. there'd be a team of media guys all ready to play the NBC team. They wanted to get at Ted Lindsay, I guess. But those were fun games, and some friends of mine came along one week and they said, "We can't believe you play a full hour of hockey at 11 o'clock. You're finished at 12, a quick shower, a bite to eat, a cup of coffee, and then you're doing the NHL game of the week, no coast to coast." And it's a wonder the brass at NBC allowed us to do that, because we could have been cut and bleeding or whatever when we went to air. But those were really fun years. And that's when NBC was introduced on the NBC shows and later on Hockey Night in Canada. And I thought, well, let me do a book with Peter Puck. And I went to Hanna-Barbera. They had an office in New York. And we did a 50-50 deal on a book, and that became 3 books. And then I negotiated the Canadian rights, and I bought those. And it got to be worldwide rights, and I purchased those. So it's all sort of in limbo now. We don't know what the future holds for Peter, although I got a nice email from a guy today who's running I guess you'd call it an advertising or marketing business, and he's quite interested in reviving Peter Puck. And my feeling is, what have I got to lose? If I'm included, fine. If they push me aside, that'll be okay too. But I do have some books in my computer about Peter Puck and the one-handed hockey player, and Peter Puck and this and that. And there should be a penny puck for the women out there that love the game of hockey. And Peter has never been seen overseas. He hasn't had much coverage in the U.S. Yeah. I think sure there'd be a place for Peter Puck in hockey. I'm surprised the NHL didn't adopt him many years ago when NBC gave up the broadcasts.
So speaking of that, Brian, are you up to reviving Peter Puck in any way?
Am I up to
reviving Peter Puck?
I told these fellas if they get going, and they took us to lunch a month ago, and they wanted to draw up some plans and get some sponsorship. And I encouraged them. I said, gee, just keep me in mind. If I can help you with anything, I can provide book material or some from my experience. What happened with Peter Puck in our museum, we had a little theater for Peter in our museum, and it was just gangbusters. People, that's the first thing they wanted to go and see. I still get the odd letter from people saying, I love Peter Puck, and there may be an idea come along to get him back in service again.
Do you have much memorabilia left from Peter Puck days? Like, did you keep anything?
No, I don't. I'm trying to dispose of whatever. I've got a mountain of, well, you maybe can't see my office, but I'm painting pictures now. And I must have 100 pictures I've painted, and I sell them occasionally. And I don't try to sell them, but they seem to sell. And I have all these books in my computer, and I have photos around, and I have other books. I have a great collection of hockey books that I have stored away in a country place. And I have my country place, and I have as many paintings out there as I have here. And it never seems to stop. And I'm trying to clean up things, thinking about who's going to do it when I'm gone. And I don't know. So that's a part of my life I worry about and anguish over, but I can't seem to help myself. Here I spent most of the day on the computer dabbling in McLean's magazines, old issues, looking for old hockey stories and thinking we could do a series of hockey magazine articles about the old days just from these great writers that wrote for McLean's. And there shouldn't be a copyright problem because after 50 years, I understand it's in the public domain. Yeah. So that helps a lot. And then there's my dad's stuff. Maybe I should do a collection of his hockey stories from the 30s and the 20s when hockey was getting popular and now is very popular. And they might like reading about that. But with the pandemic, it's been hard to make contacts and have meetings. You know how the whole world has changed.
For sure, for sure. But you know what I love hearing is that you still have the ambition. So that's actually very refreshing to see that you still have the ambition.
Well, a lot of my friends are gone, and perhaps they should have had a little more energy to keep doing things they liked doing. And if they didn't have something, they could sure find something they'd like doing. I encourage people to keep. My wife is busier than I am all day long, and she's paperwork and kitchen work and all kinds of phone calls and 100 emails a day. And um, we complain about it, but without it, I don't know where we'd be. We wouldn't be here. So we have to keep moving. Yeah.
Well, it's also your whole career. After reading your book and listening to you talk, like you've kept yourself busy since a very young person. Like you've always been busy. So usually they say, you want to get something done, you give it to the busiest person. Well, look at what you accomplished in your lifetime so far, right? Like that's quite an achievement, I would have to say.
Well, I laugh about it because the lacrosse thing didn't go anywhere in '68, but today they have a pro lacrosse league.
Yeah.
And they get big crowds for playoff games and things. And maybe I should have stuck with lacrosse. And yet I know I wouldn't have done that because it was an adventure for a year and it cost us a few $1,000s. But it seems I would have missed something if I hadn't done that. Just getting to know John Ferguson as a coach and a manager and dealing with players and there were so many stories, and just to be able to say I owned the Montreal Canadiens at one time. They say, which Canadians? Well, the lacrosse Canadians. Oh, okay.
So one question I wanted to ask you, which I just came to my mind. So one of my favorite authors or Canadian personalities growing up was Peter Zosky. So I'm sure you crossed paths with Peter many times in your travels. Can you share some insight with him?
I didn't have much association with Peter, but I sure respected him. Yeah. And I do treasure an interview he did with my dad, many, many years ago about the Hardy Boys. And I thought without Peter, I wouldn't have that in a collection, and my kids and grandkids wouldn't have been able to hear it. So he was a great, I really admire a lot of people in Canada. Some of the writers and the broadcasters and the entertainers. One of my favorites was Anne Murray. Yeah. She was quite a hockey fan, and I went to Atlantic City to do an interview with her, and she had her long white gown on, going on to do her show before a full audience. And she got us, she invited us back to her dressing room afterwards, and then she kicked off her heels and put her feet up on the coffee table and popped a beer like the guys do and drank from the bottle. And I said, she's my kind of woman, boy. Anne Murray drinking from a bottle of Molson's. And she said, let's talk hockey. And she told me how she tried to buy the Leafs for $64 million when that seemed like an astonishing amount of money. Yeah, and she couldn't even buy the dressing room for that today in a big league arena. But I was very impressed with her.
That was interesting. And then you probably came across there's Howie Meeker, Red Fisher. Like there's a lot of very famous writers you come across in your time as well.
Yeah, I worked a lot with Howie. Yep. And with Grapes, I was on the coach's corner, I guess, before Dave Hodge for a few. I was hoping they'd keep me on it, but they had Ron McLean coming in, and he was promised to replace Hodge. That's okay. You take the bumps as well as the good times that happen, and there were a lot more good times than bad. Although the Leafs should have won a Stanley Cup or two after '67, you would think, but the Ballard years put the crunch to that.
I don't even want to talk about that. I'm a lifelong Leafs fan, and it bothers me to no end. I mean, the John Kordic trade is probably like the worst going down in history I've ever heard.
Yes, how many guys can tell you who they got had to give up to get Kordic? You would know.
Wasn't it? It was Russ Courtnall, wasn't it?
Russ Courtnall.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Tiger Williams gave me when Kordick joined the Leafs, his wife had a baby, I guess, and Tiger's wife had a baby, Ben. He's a grown man now, and I saw Tiger outside the Leaf room, so I said, "Tiger, how's the baby?" He said, "Oh, just great, Brian." He said, "Ben, I know one thing. He can beat the shit out of Kordick's kid any day." I'll never forget him saying that.
So,
But Tiger was good at those comments.
yeah, he is. He's a bombastic character.
I'll tell
There's a
you,
couple of comments here. Sorry, I lost track here. Let's say Rob Lee says hi. Barry Ma says Brian McFarlane, Howie Meeker, a Hall of Fame broadcasting tandem. Very true. Very true. Dick Beddoes had an interesting voice as well. I'm not familiar who Dick Beddoes is.
oh, he was a great writer and a dapper guy. He dressed like Cherry with the hat and everything. And he was a very intelligent sports writer and broadcaster and very caustic at times. But I was asked to speak at his what do you call the ceremony they have when somebody passes. They have a ceremony a little later on, and I was so proud that I was asked to speak at that because I really respected Dick, and those were great sports writers of the day. It's a different world today. They don't get much opportunity to show their writing skills and take a character, go visit him maybe for the whole day and get a wonderful story about his home life and what he's like as an ordinary person. Now those days are gone, I guess, forever.
But there are also new opportunities too. Gonna bring up Rob Lee says I recall as a kid going down to the local Bank of Nova Scotia to pick up the latest hockey college literature. So that's for true.
Oh yeah, I went down to the Bank of Nova. Actually, I was hired by Hockey Night in Canada to run a hockey program during the intermission for kids for Imperial Oil. And I was there working a year they were going to introduce it the following season, and then they postponed it. And finally, they dropped the idea altogether. So I took the idea down to Scotiabank down the street, and I met a man there, and he said, "Well, I know your family from Haileybury. I was your dad's bank manager. Come on in. What have you got?" I said, "I have an idea for a hockey college for kids. If they come into the bank, they can get a free magazine each month, and there'll be a chance to win a trip to a Stanley Cup game or some bikes or skates or whatever, blah, 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 blah." And I gave him a short presentation. He liked the idea. So they ended up hiring me, and I was there for the next 17 years. And that Scotiabank program, it produced a lot of income for the bank because kids would join up, and they loved getting a centerfold of Larry Robinson or Guy Lafleur in the magazine and a chance to win something. And so I bet they're still with Scotiabank as they become successful wage earners and businessmen and women. There were 40% girls joined up. An American network once called me for an interview, and I said, "Well, what do you want to know about it? Is Hockey Night in Canada, NBC, Peter Puck, what?" They said, "The Scotiabank Hockey College. We want you to." Didn't even have it on my bio, and they were more interested in that than they were in anything else I've ever done.
That's awesome.
But I did have Jean Belleville as one of our directors, and Gordie Howe and Sittler and Meeker. But Belleville, to me, is the best of the lot when it comes to hockey. He's the man I admire more than any other hockey player I've ever met. He was just a fantastic ambassador for the game and the Canadians and as a person. And I got to play against him when I was a 17 or 18-year-old junior. He was the best junior in Canada, and I had the measles in the middle of the playoffs. I got out of bed after being in bed all week, and the coach said, "You watch Belleville." Well, I watched him all right. I couldn't catch up with him, so I watched him.
Belleville was a gem. I met him once. He signed a book for me. Sweetest guy. He had no business to talk to a little kid like me, but he made time, and
he would.
He was a man of his word. He told me if I write to him, he would write me back a book signed, and he did. So I still have that.
Isn't that a great story?
Yeah. I gave him my ad. I was a kid. I didn't think he would do it, but he actually took my address down, and then a month later, I had a book signed by him sent to me in the mail.
And you'll remember that all your life. As I
yeah,
remember, Stan Musial, the old ball
Yep.
player,
Mhm. Yep.
St. Louis Blues, St. Louis Cardinals. I went to Cooperstown when I was fresh into television, and I had my tape recorder, and I had a cameraman with me. And I got an interview with Stan Musial, and the cameraman said, "Brian, sorry to tell you, the film didn't thread properly. We didn't get it. Whoever that guy was, get him back here." I said, "That's Stan Musial. I can't go back and ask him to do it twice," but I did. And he came over and he did it twice. And the guy said, "Oh, the film still didn't go through. Don't let him get away." And I said, "He's gone to center field to warm up for the Hall of Fame game." "Well, go get him." And I said, "Oh, I can't do that." But I did do that. I went right to center field and I was, "Mr. Musial, I'm so sorry, but I need your interview for my show tonight. And the film is ready now." And he came back and he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, "Let's try to get it right now, kid." And I'll never forget him as long as I live, that he did that 3 times. Can you imagine a current player coming to do an interview 3 times? I can't. But he did
that's
it.
crazy. You've met like quite a few people over your life, like Gretzky, obviously, Hal, Meeker, but you met some of the legends back in the day, like Rocket Richard. Like
I played against Gretzky when he was 12 years old in an old timers game. And I went right over to the bench and I said to our coach, "That's that Gretzky kid from the Quebec Pee Wee tournament. They say he's going to be a huge star someday." And he said, "Oh, never heard of him." I said, "Okay."
A couple more comments here. So Ink Paper Wax said you can send all your memorabilia to the East Coast. That's he's got a taker. Jeff McMahon says, "Fortunate to get Hockey Night Canada in Metro Detroit and grew up watching Sir McFarlane. So thanks for the memories." So he thanks you for the memories.
Oh, isn't that nice?
And then we have Barry Moss. So he loved Hockey Night in Canada Showdown series in the second intermission. It was a predecessor to the NHL All-Stars competition. Now they're bringing back the foam targets and an accuracy shooting contest.
Yeah, Showdown was very big. I was so proud to be on Showdown with all these great stars showing their skills. And then, of course, the Leafs had to step in. Ballard said, "We don't want Salming on there. He might get hurt," or Sittler. And that kind of meant the end of Showdown, which was just a shame. Everybody loved that show.
So here's our good friend Bobby Burrell, who's on the show. He's showing us the Peter Puck and some memorabilia here for you to admire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's lots of Peter Puck stuff out there. We never got much money from Peter because everybody stole the idea and produced T-shirts and pictures and, I don't know, films. I guess everything was pirated off the network, off the internet. And we had no way to protect ourselves. It would have cost us a fortune to bring legal activity against these thieves. But I guess that's just part of the internet, and people do that. I'm writing a book now called The Maple Leaf Forever. And the publisher wants the logos in there and the emblems. Well, we're getting quite a reaction from the NHL saying, "You've got to pay us an awful lot of money for those logos." Well, they're in use everywhere on the internet. I have 2 books right here that I wrote years ago, and I got the Leafs right on the cover. And nobody ever said we got to pay for that. They should be proud that we're doing a book about the Leafs and their logos, for God's sake. And now we have to battle them to get permission without paying the NHL. Why didn't the Leafs keep their own rights to the logos? They've steered everything to the NHL, and they should have control over their own emblems, you would think. But that's just an old man's opinion, right?
No, it's okay. I appreciate it. So, Kent, I went off on a tangent there. I'll let you ask some questions.
Sure. So there's a chapter in the book here where your dad caught you skipping school for forging your mom's signature. Now, you did this all to play hockey. Did you ever in a million years realize that your career path would forge into writing and hockey together for as long as you did?
I don't think she ever. She must have. She was a smart mother, and she probably just said, "He's going to do it anyway." And the other kids skipped in the afternoon to go to the movies. So I would skip in the morning and go down to the arena, and there'd be a bunch of firemen playing, and they'd need an extra body or something on wings. So that's how I learned to play hockey pretty well, was skipping school and going to the arena and getting on the ice for as many minutes as I could to improve. And while I never got to be major league stature, it got me through college, and it got me through junior A, and it got me through 20 years playing alongside Mahovlich and Ullman and Harry Watson, and I'm on the ice at the Gardens playing against Lindsay and Howe. I'm on the ice at the Forum playing against the Rocket, and John Ferguson sidles up next to me. And as well as I knew him, I said, "John, take it easy on an old man tonight." And he gave me a look that pierced right through me, as if to say, "Stay out of my way and you'll be okay." So those experiences, who could ever expect that to happen in a lifetime? But they did.
Yeah, what about from other sports? Like you said, Stan Musial, but what other athletes from other sports did you come across?
Oh, well, I did Argo games on radio on CFRB for a couple of years with Wes McKnight. Other sports, I played them all like everybody else. Touch football in high school, baseball. A guy ran into me at second base and broke up my knee one day for hockey, and I've never forgiven him, because he didn't need to leap on me to gain the base. He could have gone around me. So that memory lingers. I was never fast. I was never tough. And yet somehow with hockey, I was able to advance my skills to a level that was satisfactory, if not great. And I played till I was 84 down in Florida with these guys. And I enjoyed every minute of it. There are certain lessons you learn. You just keep your mouth shut when you're in the dressing room with a bunch of former NHLers, at least for the first year or two. And I taught a guy that lesson in Florida, because he came up to me the first day he arrived to play with us, and he said, "I used to hate you on TV." And I thought, well, that's not the way I hoped my day would start off here today. So we got on the ice, and suddenly he's on my left wing, and he threw a pass over to me that was 40 feet in front of me. And then another one went 20 feet behind me. So I called him over, and I've forgotten his name, but I said, "Dave," whatever his name was. Those were the two worst effing passes I've ever seen in my life. And that shut him up. He went home and told his wife he'd said that, and she said, "You didn't say that to Mr. McFarlane, did you?" And gave him hell, apparently. But
I have one question for you.
Yeah.
You when you were in your book, you clearly have a good love for Ted Lindsay. Was he your favorite pal growing up?
He was a wonderful pal for the NBC years and beyond. We stayed friends long after those telecasts were over. He'd come to Florida, and we'd go to lunch. We'd play golf together. His wife was wonderful, and he had a great attitude about life and living, and he had the guts to stand up against the owners and start a union when it sure meant disaster for his career. He was shipped off to last place Chicago. He was reviled by the owners. He had to suffer a lot, and Ted Lindsay was able to start what has become the NHLPA. And that was back in the 50s. And I so admired him for that. He was such a gutsy. And then, we'd be walking down the street in a pretty bad section of Philadelphia, and there were gangs gravitating to the corners. And I said, well, at least I got Ted Lindsay next to me, one of the toughest. And I looked over, and he looked about the size of Sandy Hawley. I thought, he's not a big guy. He's not going to be able to take care of a gang if we get assaulted down here. But we made it back. The cops came along and said, "How far are you guys going down here?" "Well, we got to go back to the hotel." Well, we'll trail along to make sure you get there safely. There's been a lot of activity down here tonight, whatever
That's
that meant.
he sounds like he had the nickname Terrible Ted Lindsay, right? Wasn't that the nickname?
Yeah,
he had?
Terrible Ted.
Yeah. We have one question here. I just want to make sure I'm asking this properly, Bobby. So Bobby says, would the Leafs in 1975 stop allowing their logo to be used on collectibles? So he has found. It's a question for you.
I'm sorry, I missed. Could you just repeat it? My hearing problem.
No worries. The question for you is, would the Leafs in 1975 stop allowing their logo to be used on collectibles? That was his question. That's what he's pretty much gathered from his research, but he's asking you the question.
Oh, I don't know. I don't. Not sure I understood it. And 1975. Nothing rings a bell about that. So I'm sorry.
No worries. No worries. We'll say that for another one.
Yeah.
Sorry, Kent. I totally hogged the mic. I'm going to let you go.
No, it's quite all right. So it's. I don't think it's a big secret that Ameet and yourself and myself to a certain degree, we share a love for the Maple Leafs. So, what are your thoughts, Brian, on today's Leafs? Do you see any synergies from the glory days to today?
I didn't quite understand. I don't know whether it's.
Oh, no worries. I'll repeat it again.
In my computer. Or...
Brian, I'll repeat it again. So, what are your thoughts on today's Leafs, the Maple Leafs of today? Do you see any synergies from today's Leafs compared to the glory days of the Leafs?
Oh, yeah. Let me comment on that. I've been watching hockey lately and football, NFL. And I said to my wife, I can't watch this. Those guys aren't even trying tonight. They're going in slow motion. Those NFL players, they give up on chasing a guy down the field. They just let him run in for a touchdown. They get all mixed up in the line play. These are professional guys making millions a year. And some of the hockey guys aren't far behind them. I at one time said, well, all the players today are bigger and faster and stronger and they shoot harder. And then I look at some of them in some games, not all, and they just appeared to be going through the motions. Some of them can't score a goal to save their life. They've been around for 15 years and all their goals, I guess, have been scored. And if they have one or two left, let's hope the Leafs get a couple of them. But and they're nice people. They want to stay in the game as long as they can. I don't blame them for that. And they look almost as good as anybody else out there, but not quite. And then there are these young guys scooting around for other teams. I don't know their names. I don't know whether they're Russian or Canadian or American. It doesn't seem to matter anymore. But you see the talent in these guys and the stick handling skills, and you say, well, there's a guy, I must learn his name because it looks like he's going to be around for a while. So I'm totally confused about the big league sports today, and I don't mind confessing it.
Are you still passionate about the Leafs, or are you kind of thinking, you know what, do they have the right the team, or what do you think?
Well, I'm not as passionate about anything anymore as I used to be, especially certain subjects. But I am a Leaf fan inside. But when I got into broadcasting, I wasn't told. I just knew instinctively you can't be a homer. You've got to give the other fella a bouquet if he does well. And I tried to do that along the way. But of course, if the Leafs won the game, there was never a grumble. Everybody went home happy. So a winning Leaf team made it easier on the broadcasters and everybody, the sponsors, everybody. And I would like them to come back and win a cup, but the odds keep getting longer. They let more teams in at multi-millions of dollars, and those teams become good very quickly. So the Leafs could go another 100 years without winning a Stanley Cup. But hopefully in my lifetime, I will see them get to the finals at least. And that would be a revelation. And yet, I don't think they've got enough in the lower ranks of the team this year to make it. Mikheyev, whatever you pronounce it, has shown some good scoring bursts. but a lot of them don't seem able to find enough golds to supplement the 4 stars they've got. And that's my comment.
No worries. We totally realize we're almost at an hour. Do we want to keep you too long, Brian? So we'll wrap it up fairly shortly.
I don't mind. You just
Yeah?
this is very flattering to be invited to be on your show, and I'll revel in it. Okay.
No worries. So Kent, go ahead, buddy.
So you mentioned earlier that you're an accomplished painter. So what things do you like to paint, and how do you go about picking it?
Well, I like pond hockey art. The kids don't play pond hockey. Well, they do play, and there are tournaments and everything around the world for pond hockey. A lot of people don't realize that, but they're mainly for adults. And as kids, we used to go on the pond. The corner lot would freeze over, and we'd play
I know
there.
what that's like, because I did that all the time when I was a kid.
Yeah. So I like painting that, and I like Canadian scenes. I painted as a kid, and I took lessons from an Ottawa artist, 50 cents, Henri Masson. And the football coach said, "McFarlane, where were you yesterday?" "Sir, I was art lessons. I have to go every Wednesday, 50 cents. He said, "Well, we don't want any artists on our football team." And I gave it up for him and football, and I never got much out of football. And I still resent him for kind of maneuvering or manipulating me to play football, give up art.
Right.
I've had so much more joy from art than I ever got from football. And so I learned a lesson from that. And I encourage kids. I have a great grandson who shows a lot of talent with his little drawings and everything. And am I going to encourage him to pursue that for as long as he likes or gets some pleasure from it? Because I can see something there, a little spark of talent. And I would never say to him, "Well, why would you want to paint pictures when you can get out and play baseball or hockey?" So we'll see what happens there.
Go ahead, Ken.
Let's see here. So in your book, you write a lot about some of the legends of hockey. For those of us who collect vintage hockey cards, it's fascinating that you had personal relationships with Gordie Howe, Johnny Bower, George Armstrong, just to name a few. Do you ever look back at your contact list and just smile and think, wow, I've had a blessed career about all those people that I've met?
Oh, yes, I do. And some wonderful people. And I just wish I could contact them. Some of them are gone now. And I did that today with one man I know whose time on earth is short. And I told him exactly what I felt about him. It wasn't all positive, but it indicated to him that I had a lot more respect for him over the years than I showed him or told him. And it's late to do that, but I try to do that with other people as well, because there are so many people who leave a mark or something with you that you appreciate just in the way they treat you and encourage you. And I just wish I could reach out and tell all these people that I'd like to be able to give this message to, how much I loved them or respected them. And I'll never be able to do with a lot of people, but I try.
It's a good way to live life. I think there's a lot of important lessons in there. The one thing I wanted to ask is, what was the spark that got you back into painting? Like, what was it? What was it that I'm going to pick up a paintbrush and do it this day?
Would you repeat it, please?
What made you pick up a paintbrush after all this time and start doing it again?
Oh, well, I guess I was down in Florida 20 years ago, and a friend of mine was painting. And I said, well, I used to paint, and there's a painting class up in the town north of us. And they have classes. Why don't we go up there? And we started going every Wednesday to an art class, and it wasn't very satisfying, and he was a skilled painter, but he tore up everything he painted. I said, oh, Brian, why are you doing that? So somehow I got the passion back for painting. And there's another former surgeon that I paint with down in Florida. He's very, very good. He sells his paintings for $10,000. No problem. Big canvases, water scenes, and everything. And there's another fellow that lived right next door to me at our country place. His name is Peter Doig. He's living in Trinidad now, and he's a hockey fan. And he invited us to play hockey with him on the local rink one Christmas. And I said, Peter, you're a really good hockey player. You're over in England playing. He's going to school over there. I didn't realize he's going to art college. Peter sells his paintings for 26 million, 33 million, 16 million.
Wow.
You may have heard of Peter Doig, but he was my next door neighbor in the country. And he said PK Subban came up to him in the Montreal dressing room when he was visiting Montreal and got a chance to tour the dressing room. PK said, Peter, I always wanted to be an artist, but I couldn't afford to give up hockey. They pay me so much money to play this game.
That's just funny.
But Peter's making twice as much or 3 times as much money as PK Subban.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's amazing. Let me just go back to the questions over here. So I think you kind of, Kent, it's okay if I grab the last one?
Go for it. Yes,
Yeah.
of course.
The one thing, you've been very inspirational, first of all, Brian. So first of all, I'm tickled pink that I got a chance to talk to you. We got a chance to talk to you, but you've kind of seeded little bits of, metaphors about life, inspiration. I'm going to ask you this one question. It's a question we ask all our guests before we end the show. And we want to ask you, what inspires you?
Oh, I guess a lot of things inspire me. Just reading the Maclean's articles, I think this is a gold mine. This should be revived. People should be reading about the natives and the battles they had getting to the Yukon and how the RCMP was instrumental in keeping law and order in this country. This is a great country we've got. I can't believe what's going on south of the border. It's just awful. That's the word that comes to mind. But I'm inspired by people that do good deeds and do wonderful things with their lives. And I wish I could be like a lot of them, but I'll never be. So I guess family members inspire me. My sister's an award-winning author, and I love what she writes. I really can't explain it very well except in those short words. But there's a lot of things that can inspire you along the way. Anybody, yes.
So I'm going to help you there. I'm going to say, keep doing what you love, do what you love a lot. Don't let anyone knock you down and keep on going on, right? Keep doing what you want to do. So you've shown that in all of your careers, your different endeavors. So I think a lot of people can learn from that. And you are a part of Canadiana. So we're glad to have gotten a chance to talk to you. I want to thank you so much for your time. And what we'll do is we'll end the broadcast really shortly. And we'll hang out there, Brian. We're going to talk after, but let me just hang up the broadcast for you, okay?
Okay. Well, thank you for thinking of me. I feel sometimes like the forgotten man in broadcasting or sports, but I accept it. You get to be my age, and why would anybody remember? But thank you for remembering and making the call or the email that pulled this together.
Not a problem at all. Our pleasure. And I'm going to leave one comment up on here to make your day, or a couple maybe. So I'm going to say, Peter is one of the most renowned living figurative painters. That's the wrong one. Oops, sorry. This is the one I wanted to bring up. Thank you for being such a wonderful ambassador to the game that we all love. That's the comment I want to leave you with.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I want to thank all of you that came to come watch. This is definitely a bucket list moment. I apologize, Kent. I know I talked a lot, but I was been waiting all day for this. So, everyone, we'll see you tomorrow for our next show.
Bobby says, Bobby says, why is it going away? There you go. We love you, Brian. That's what Bobby wanted to tell you.
Thank you so much.
No worries. So hang out there, Brian. We're gonna end the show, and we'll see you all tomorrow. Talk
Yep.
soon.
See you all tomorrow night. Bye,
Cheers.
folks.